Like, the news of U.S. national debt crossing $4 trillion is disturbing. Are we on the verge of an economic collapse?
The U.S. national debt has just hit an all-time high of $40 trillion. The national debt is essentially the gap between how much money the United States is bringing in and how much it's spending. Hitting $40 trillion has a lot of potential ramifications for the U.S. economy. It can create a question of confidence in whether or not the country will ever be able to pay this money back, and that could mean higher interest rates and a higher cost of living for Americans. President Trump has promised for a long time that he would be able to eliminate the national debt.
We will start paying that debt down. We're $21 trillion, a number that is, unthinkable.
President Trump also promised to tackle deficits in his second term.
We're close to $36 trillion right now. We're going to work on getting it down.
One of President Trump's big initiatives was the Department of Government Efficiency, which was initially led by Elon Musk and was intended to cut about $1 trillion from the national debt by shrinking government across the board. So far, most of those cuts have not panned out. Another policy that President Trump planned to use to pay down the national debt was tariff revenue. Unfortunately for the Trump administration, the Supreme Court ruled that many of those tariffs were actually illegal, and they had to refund about $160 billion worth of tariffs. Another policy that's increased the national debt this year is the Republican tax cuts that were passed last summer, known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. Those are estimated to cost between $3 and $4 trillion over a 10-year period. So that means that money that would have been scheduled to come in terms of tax revenue is not going to be coming in. The Trump administration makes the argument that these incentives are going to jumpstart economic growth, creating additional tax revenue in the future, but that sort of remains to be seen. The national debt has been going up over many presidencies with Republicans and Democrats in office. Under President Trump, it has been growing at an unusually fast clip and faster than expected. The trajectory that we're going in is going to continue to be higher and higher unless lawmakers decide that they really want to get serious about cutting spending and increasing taxes. And that's always a really difficult thing, particularly when we have midterm elections coming up, and nobody really wants to make promises that American voters are not going to want to hear.
Like, by changing gears, USA is now threatening economic isolation of Iran. Iran has vowed devastation. And oil.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. will have a clear message for other countries in the economic pressure on Iran.
This is going to be the greatest coordinated economic isolation in the history of the world, that we are going to them and saying, you are either with us or against us. You want this murderous regime to end.
Bessent says the plan will require U.S. allies and others to stop all economic activity with the Iranian regime or face the consequences.
If you insist on doing business with them, either transferring money, buying their oil, they're doing seaborne ship transfers, then the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. government, they will put its full might and force toward enforcing against you. So it is time for our allies and the rest of the world to make a decision, and we are going to squash the economy of this murderous regime.
Iran's foreign minister denounced the U.S. economic threats and said those failed policies will stir more hostility among Iranians. Other reports say Iran's leaders have begun implementing measures like rationing in order to survive this economic onslaught, and bet that high oil prices will force the White House to stop. Bessent says the president still has the military option, but believes this economic warfare will work in Iran like it worked in Venezuela and now in Cuba.
Iran mocks USA.
Can you tell us about your ride on the airport catering truck in Turkey? Why did you need to do that?
Well, it's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go in a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
Why did they want you to do that?
I guess there was a threat out there. I didn't really ask them much about it. I get a lot of threats.
Why was it too dangerous for you to fly on Air Force One, but
Well,
not
I don't
too
know.
dangerous
I
for the
think
press?
actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk.
Why
I think
do you
it was
say
at greater
that?
risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian called for an end to the war with the United States, saying Tehran should stop fighting while it remained in a position of power and dignity. Pezeshkian defended the recent US-Iran agreement as a major achievement, approved by Iran's Supreme National Security Council, insisting it did not amount to surrender. He said all commitments in the agreement are on the other side, and that Iran would under no circumstances bow to bullying if attacked again.
We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
So Donald Trump says a deal with Iran could be close, but inside Iran, a possible deal is being framed through the lens of victory and defiance. After weeks of war, a maritime blockade, and the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the message from Iran's leaders is simple. We stood firm, and Trump blinked. State media reporting that President Masoud Pezeshkian declared that Iran, quote, will not surrender to excessive demands, and that negotiations are, quote, designed to fully secure the rights of the Iranian nation. Senior military figures are pairing diplomacy with deterrence. Senior military advisor to the Supreme Leader, Mohsen Rezai, declaring, quote, one hand on the trigger while officials negotiate, calling this the final move that could bring decades of security. Iran's foreign ministry acknowledges that there has been understanding on many issues, but foreign ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai says an agreement is not necessarily imminent.
Politics and decision-making in the United States are experiencing a kind of institutionalized instability.
The U.S. military has lost more than a quarter of its Reaper drones in the war with Iran. That's according to a Washington Post report, which cites 3 U.S. officials familiar with this matter. At least 49 MQ-9 drones used for surveillance and targeted strikes have been lost, costing up to $50 million each, bringing the potential total in Reaper drone losses to more than $1.3 billion. The Air Force is now reportedly looking at how quickly it can rebuild the fleet. The Pentagon has denied previous reports that its weapons stockpiles are running low, even as the Trump administration went to Congress to ask for tens of billions of more dollars to help pay for costs of the Iran war and to restock supply.
Like, Trump was his usual self in mocking France for surrender to Hitler while appealing to allies to join war against Iran.
I think, important moment for this country. 2 weeks ago I was calling people and back and forth with leaders, including President Putin, including French president, including lots of different people. And all of them said, we're celebrating victory in World War II. And I said, wow, isn't that amazing? We're the only one that wasn't celebrating, and we're the one that won the war. Now, Russia did help. They did lose 51 million people, in all fairness. People would say, oh, he's sticking up for Russia. No, they lost 51 million people. And, we can't forget that. But France was celebrating. And, as you know, Hitler made a speech at the Eiffel Tower. But when I spoke to President Macron, he said, oh, we are celebrating the great victory of World War II. And I think that's great that he was doing it. But we're the one that won it, and we weren't celebrating. I said to myself, isn't that crazy? And I think it's time for us to celebrate a little bit. You know, we've had a lot of victories.
Then I call up France, Macron, whose wife treats him extremely badly. And he's still recovering from the right to the jaw. And I say, Emmanuel, we'd love to have some help in the Gulf, even though we're setting records and knocking out bad people and knocking out ballistic missiles. We'd love to have some help. If you could you please send ships immediately? No. We cannot do that, Donald. We can do that after the war is won. I said, no, I don't need after the war is won, Emmanuel.
Écoutez, je ne veux pas rentrer, on parle de choses trop graves, on parle de guerre, on parle aujourd'hui de femmes et d'hommes qui sont au combat, de femmes et d'hommes et de civils qui sont tués, de la guerre qui sévit dans cette région. On parle aussi des conséquences de cette guerre sur nos économies. Je pense à nos compatriotes, les Américains vivent la même chose, les prix de l'essence, du gaz qui montent, et donc les propos que j'ai pu entendre, auxquels vous faites référence, ne sont ni élégants ni à la hauteur. Voilà, donc je ne vais pas y répondre, ça ne mérite pas de réponse.
Peter Navarro's Brahmins remark on India sparks backlash. US Trade Advisor Peter Navarro's ugly rant on India after PM Modi's meet with Xi Jinping Putin sparks backlash. I got firebombed, US Presidential Counselor Peter Navarro on online backlash over India remarks.
If you're complaining about Monday blues, spare a thought for Peter Navarro. He is the White House trade advisor, and this Monday hit him with images from the SCO. Pictures of Prime Minister Modi and Presidents Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping standing shoulder to shoulder, shaking hands, laughing and even huddling. If you are Navarro, that's the nightmare reel for you. Because this is a man who accused India of getting in bed with authoritarians. And the next thing he sees are these images going viral. So he responded with what he does best, a rant. When in doubt, play dirty. Navarro's latest jab was not just about trade or oil, it was dragging caste into the mix, accusing Brahmins of profiteering, all while ordinary Indians suffer. That's not diplomacy or leverage, that's a dog whistle. The idea is to paint India as feudal and corrupt. It's a new law, but here's what they do not talk about. Europe still buys Russian gas, the US still imports Russian uranium, but it's India that is bankrolling Putin's war. The hypocrisy is glaring. When India buys discounted oil, it is aiding authoritarians. When Europe does it, it is maintaining stability.
It was a shame to see Modi getting in bed as the leader of the biggest democracy in the world with the two biggest authoritarian dictators in the world, in Putin and Xi Jinping. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure what he's thinking, particularly since India has been in a cold war and sometimes a hot war with China for decades.
But I can tell you, I got actually firebombed by the Indian continent on the internet with all sorts of nasty little attacks. And all I would say, you don't do that. That's not how we resolve problems here in America.
Peter Navarro's attack on India triggers meme storm. Trade row turns into viral spectacle.
As the Ukraine-Russia war has gone on, I guess 6-8 months ago, I think I wrote an op-ed in the Financial Times, which absolutely factually correctly pointed out that prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, India was not involved in the oil trade with Russia, but afterwards it got heavily involved and was selling a lot of refined products on behalf of Russia, which helped feed the war machine.
Peter Navarro's public attempt to pressurize New Delhi over its multi-billion-dollar imports of discounted Russian oil has backfired into a relentless digital counteroffensive. Navarro publicly asserted that American taxpayers are indirectly subsidizing what he labeled Modi's war by allowing India to buy cheap Russian oil. He claims New Delhi functions as the financial shield for the Kremlin by refining Russian crude and selling it to global markets. In a highly unusual rhetorical turn, Navarro explicitly accused India's upper-class Brahmins of orchestrating and profiteering from these oil deals. If Navarro expected a defensive bureaucratic response from Indian authorities, he severely underestimated the nature of modern digital warfare. Within minutes of his broadcast, the phrase Indian continent began trending globally as millions of internet users chose to weaponize comedy. Digital feeds were quickly flooded with AI-generated images transforming Russian President Vladimir Putin into an Indian persona named Vladimir Pandey, alongside viral images of traditional priests blessing oil barrels. While the internet laughed, the domestic political response in India turned fiercely unified. Lawmakers from opposing political parties condemned Navarro's caste-based rhetoric as a deliberate attempt to manipulate internal social dynamics. Concurrently, India's MEA flatly dismissed his trade data, labeling the claims completely inaccurate and misleading. Domestic critics are also highlighting Syria Western hypocrisy, noting that while Navarro attacks India's energy autonomy, Western nations continue to import massive volumes of critical refined products. With Navarro now complaining that his feeds are entirely unreadable, the episode serves as a modern geopolitical lesson. In a hyper-connected world, launching a culturally misdirected political attack can instantly turn a senior policymaker into the internet's favorite punchlines.
Poll slump and Trump snub. Double whammy for Bibi ahead of Israel election. Is Netanyahu losing ground? A pre-poll survey showed Netanyahu's liquid trailing former IDF chief Gadi Eisenkot's Yashar party. Yashar is projected to win 25 seats, while Likud is projected to secure only 21 if the October 27th election were held today. The anti-Netanyahu bloc is projected to win 58 seats, compared with 51 for pro-Netanyahu parties, in the 120-member Knesset. Tensions between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are no longer behind closed doors. This week Trump told Fox News he may endorse somebody in Israel's October 27th election, deliberately leaving Netanyahu's name off the table. According to Axios, Trump privately called Bibi his own worst enemy. The flashpoint came earlier this month, when Netanyahu publicly rejected Trump's 15-point Gaza plan.
U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan has hit a new snag. Israel is rejecting the 15-point plan for Gaza developed by Trump's Board of Peace and will not withdraw its military until Hamas fully disarmed.
This plan was aimed at bringing the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas into its second phase after it was signed in October last year. President Donald Trump said Hamas had agreed to the proposal, which includes a commitment for the group to give up all of its weapons, among other provisions. The U.S. president called it a major milestone, but today Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is rejecting it. He says Israeli troops will not leave Gaza until Hamas has genuinely disarmed. And the sequencing of those two events was always going to be a sticking point because neither Israel nor Hamas wanted to be the first one to act. Now, Netanyahu also says the Israeli military will continue defending against threats. We have seen it continue strikes on Gaza since that ceasefire was agreed. And Netanyahu also insists that while he leads Israel, there will be no Palestinian state. There was always going to be significant opposition to this plan from within Netanyahu's cabinet. He was under a lot of political pressure to reject it. But it was heralded by President Donald Trump with so much fanfare that distancing himself from it is a pretty strong statement by the Israeli Prime Minister, and it really does suggest a divergence between the two leaders. Now, a Hamas official has been quoted by Reuters as saying that the group is still committed to the roadmap that was put forward by the Board of Peace, that body that was set up to oversee the transition in Gaza after the war. And Hamas also says it expects mediators to secure an agreement from Israel.
ישראל שוללת את מסמך 15 הנקודות. צה"ל לא יבצע נסיגה כלשהי עד פירוק החמאס מנשקו. וכשאני אומר פירוק החמאס מנשקו, זה אומר הנשק הכבד, הנשק הפחות כבד, והנשק הקל, כל הנשק, ואנחנו מדברים על פירוק אמיתי, לא פירוק פיקטיבי. עכשיו אנחנו מדברים עם האמריקנים על הנושא הזה. יש להם רעיונות, חלק מהם מקובלים עלינו, וחלק לא מקובלים עלינו. כל עוד אני ראש ממשלה, לא תקום מדינה פלסטינית, לא בעזה ולא ביו"ש. לא פתחסטן ולא חמאסטן.
Like, White House aide Natalie Harp's intimate letters to Trump make interesting reading.
The professional relationship that exists between the US president and one of his closest aides has been under the microscope here in the US in recent days, and now there are some new letters that are adding fuel to the fire. US media outlet The Daily Beast has published 2 letters in full it claims were written by Natalie Harp and sent to her boss Donald Trump back in 2023 at a time when he was not president. Here is just one small portion of what was said in one of those letters. She says, "I never want to bring you anything but joy. I'm sorry I lost my focus. You are all that matters to me. I don't want to ever let you down. Thank you for being my guardian and my protector in this life." And the letter was signed, "All my heart, Natalie." This is an employee who is always photographed in and around the White House, the Oval Office, Air Force One. She's usually seen carrying papers, phones, laptops, bags for the president. She is rarely the story, but that is exactly what she has become after these comments, which you're about to hear from US Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff.
See, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
Guys, everyone here is talking about these comments, and the White House is staunchly defending Natalie Harp at the moment. It says she is one of the most loyal and hardest working aides on the US president's team. This is an employee who is so often on the sidelines of politics, guys, but right now she is firmly in the headlines.
For the first time, some of the deeply personal letters written by President Donald Trump's close aide Natalie Harp are being published in full. The Daily Beast obtained 2 letters written by Harp back in 2023. I'm going to read some of what they say. The first one says, quote, "I never want to bring you anything but joy. I'm sorry I lost my focus. You are all that matters to me. I don't want to ever let you down. Thank you for being my guardian and protector in this life." Another reads, "Please, when I fail, will you tell me? You have the absolute right to cuss me out if need be when I deserve it, because no one knows or cares about me more." Now, I think what's important to know about Harp is just how deep the connection between her and Trump runs. I'd remind people that she actually credits Trump with saving her life.
"I was that forgotten person on the side of the road."
She has said that she had suffered from bone cancer, and it was legislation that was signed by President Donald Trump back in 2018 that allowed her to receive experimental treatments. I should note she has never listed what those treatments are, but she's also someone who is omnipresent in Trump's orbit. She's often with him throughout the day in many of his meetings, and then speaks with him late into the evening about social media posts. She also serves a specific purpose for Trump. She's someone who is a channel for foreign leaders who can reach out to her if they feel like they are unable to get in touch with the president. She's also someone Trump asks often to reach out to people that he watches on television and likes what they are saying. So they have a very deep connection. I will note the White House has said in multiple statements this week that she is a loyal and hardworking aide to the president, has been very defensive of her, but a lot of attention on Harp following those initial comments from the Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff earlier in the week.
Why is everyone talking about Natalie Harp? Many Americans have never heard of her, yet she's one of President Trump's closest aides. The 35-year-old is a former TV host who started working for Trump in 2022 after crediting him with saving her life. She's been at Trump's side ever since, serving as his executive assistant and earning the nickname Human Printer for reportedly following him with a portable printer to provide hard copies of information, his preferred format. Her proximity to the president has made headlines, most recently after Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff suggested Trump doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie. But the White House has defended Harp, calling her one of the most loyal and hardest working aides on President Trump's team.
इमरान खान के मामले में अचानक बड़ा फैसला। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ऐसा हुक्म दे दिया है जिसने मुल्क की सियासत में नई हलचल पैदा कर दी है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बानी पीटीआई इमरान खान को अगली समात तक शिफा इंटरनेशनल अस्पताल मुंतकिल करने का हुक्म दे दिया है, लेकिन असल बात सिर्फ अस्पताल मुंतकिली नहीं। अदालत ने इमरान खान के लिए खसूसी मेडिकल बोर्ड तश्कील देने का भी हुक्म दिया है, यानी अब उनकी सेहत का बाकायदा तिब्बी जायजा माहिर डॉक्टरों की निगरानी में होगा। और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एक और अहम हिदायत भी दी है, इमरान खान को सख्त सिक्योरिटी में अस्पताल मुंतकिल किया जाए, लेकिन अस्पताल के बाहर अमनो अमान की सूरत हाल किसी सूरत खराब नहीं होनी चाहिए। अब यहाँ सबसे बड़ा सवाल ये है कि आखिर इमरान खान की सेहत के बारे में ऐसी क्या सूरत हाल पैदा हुई कि मामला सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक पहुँचा और अदालत ने निजी अस्पताल मुंतकिल करने का हुक्म दे दिया। क्या मेडिकल बोर्ड की रिपोर्ट इमरान खान की सेहत के हवाले से कोई नई तस्वीर सामने लाएगी या फिर ये फैसला आने वाले दिनों में पाकिस्तान की सियासत पर भी असर डाल सकता है? फिलहाल एक बात तय है, इमरान खान की अस्पताल मुंतकिली के बाद सबकी नजरें मेडिकल बोर्ड की रिपोर्ट और सुप्रीम कोर्ट की अगली समाअत पर होंगी। और अगर मेडिकल बोर्ड की रिपोर्ट में कोई अहम बात सामने आती है तो ये मामला सिर्फ तिब्बी नहीं रहेगा, इसके सियासी असरात भी बहुत दूर तक जा सकते हैं।
The Supreme Court of Pakistan's Registrar Office returned a review petition filed by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's federal government, which sought to overturn an order to transfer incarcerated former Prime Minister Imran Khan from Adiala jail to a private hospital for health treatment. Details of the case and court action, the hospital order. The Supreme Court ordered authorities to move Khan from Rawalpindi's Adiala jail to Islamabad's private Shifa International Hospital for medical checks and allowed him to stay under supervision until September 16th. The federal government challenged the ruling, arguing that moving a convicted prisoner to a private facility violated prison rules and set a disruptive legal precedent. The rejection of petition by SC and its return to government. The Supreme Court Registrar Office sent the government's review petition back due to incomplete paperwork and deficient paper books, leaving the original hospitalization order intact. Pakistan ex-PM Imran Khan back in jail after shorter than expected hospital visit. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan was briefly taken to hospital, declared medically fit, and sent back to prison within a few hours early on Friday, a surprise move that his supporters and party said violated a top court directive. The former Premier's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, PTI, party said it would file a contempt petition against what it termed a blatant violation of the Supreme Court order from earlier this week that, according to the party's interpretation, meant Khan should remain under medical supervision until at least mid-September.
watching Sanglikar's Weekly. Like, BNP's Mirza Alamgir is elected new president of Bangladesh.
For the first time in 35 years, Bangladesh witnessed a contested presidential vote. In a 255 to 88 parliamentary ballot, veteran political leader Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir was elected as the nation's 23rd president. The 78-year-old Secretary General of the ruling Bangladesh Nationalist Party defeated opposition candidate Oli Ahmed, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Now, Alamgir's election follows the early resignation of President Mohammad Shahabuddin, who stepped down citing health reasons. Although Bangladesh's president is largely a ceremonial head of state, the timing makes his vote significant. For a country recovering from months of political turbulence, filling this head of state vacancy marks a crucial step toward constitutional stability and reflects the new balance of power under the BNP-led government. So who is Mirza Fakhrul? His journey spans decades, from student activist during the 1969 uprising to an economics professor, civil servant, and eventually BNP's longest-serving Secretary General. Known as a moderate voice, Alamgir has steered his party through nearly 2 decades in opposition. Now, while the presidency is largely ceremonial, Alamgir's elevation brings experienced, calm leadership to the top of state governance in Bangladesh.
Like, Chinese real estate giant Xu Jiayin is sentenced to life imprisonment by a Chinese court. Said,
Once one of China's richest men, Evergrande founder Hui Kai-yan has been sentenced to life in prison. It's a dramatic fall for the 67-year-old billionaire who built one of China's biggest property empires. So how did he get here? Evergrande was once the face of China's property boom, selling homes as the country's real estate market rapidly expanded. But the company borrowed heavily. When Beijing introduced restrictions aimed at excessive borrowing and property speculation, Evergrande's access to credit narrowed. Then, in 2021, it defaulted after struggling to repay its creditors. Now, a court in Shenzhen says Hui and Evergrande engaged in continuous large-scale financial fraud between 2016 and 2021. According to the court, they inflated assets and concealed liabilities. It also said they gained control of financial institutions through bribery, without naming those institutions. Hui pleaded guilty in April to charges including embezzlement and bribery. He was sentenced to life in prison on the 20th of August, stripped of his political rights for life and ordered to surrender all his personal property. Evergrande and its real estate arm will also fined a combined 15.82 billion yuan. And Hui isn't the only one facing punishment. 5 other Evergrande executives were sentenced to between 6 and 18 years in prison. China's state news agency Xinhua says 56 people were given jail sentences, including Hui's 2 sons. The verdict marks an extraordinary reversal for a man who was once not only one of China's richest billionaires, but also a member of the Communist Party's top political advisory body. And it comes as China continues to grapple with a prolonged property downturn, with new home prices contracting for 3 years.
China Evergrande founder Hui Kai-yan has been sentenced to life imprisonment, completing a stunning fall from one of Asia's richest businessmen to the central figure in the collapse of the world's most indebted property developer. The Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court also ordered the confiscation of all Hui's personal property. The 67-year-old, also known as Xu Jiayin, pleaded guilty in April to 8 charges, including fundraising fraud, misuse of funds, illegally accepting public deposits, illegally issuing loans, securities fraud, and bribery. The court said the crimes committed by Hui, Evergrande Group, and its property subsidiary involved exceptionally large sums, caused significant economic losses, and created serious social harm. Evergrande was fined 8.82 billion yuan, equivalent to approximately 1.31 billion US dollars, while its main subsidiary, Hengda Real Estate, was fined another 7 billion yuan. 5 other senior executives received prison sentences ranging from 6 to 18 years, along with financial penalties. State broadcaster CCTV reported that a total of 56 other people connected to Evergrande were also sentenced as part of the wider proceedings. Hui had not been seen publicly since Chinese authorities detained him in 2023. Images released by the court showed him standing between 2 officers as the judgment was delivered, ending a dramatic journey from a poor rural upbringing to the peak of China's property industry. Raised by his grandmother in a village in Henan province, Hui initially worked as a steel technician before founding Evergrande in 1996. Through aggressive borrowing and rapid construction, he transformed the company into China's largest property developer by contracted sales. Evergrande was listed in Hong Kong in 2009, after raising around 6 billion Hong Kong dollars in an initial public offering. The company later expanded beyond housing into electric vehicles, wealth management products, tourism, healthcare, and professional football. At the height of his success in 2017, Hui was named Asia's richest person by Forbes, with an estimated fortune of 45.3 billion US dollars. His public image and real estate-driven wealth led some media organizations to compare him with Donald Trump. But Evergrande's vast empire had been built on enormous borrowing. The company eventually defaulted on most of its liabilities, estimated at more than 300 billion US dollars, after failing to meet its financial obligations in 2021. The collapse affected far more than Evergrande's executives and international creditors. Home buyers were left waiting for unfinished apartments. Suppliers faced unpaid bills, and ordinary investors lost money placed in the company's wealth management products. The losses triggered protests and intensified public anger over the company's conduct. Evergrande's failure also became a symbol of China's wider property crisis. Years of rapid construction and debt-fueled expansion were followed by falling sales, unfinished developments, and financial pressure across an industry that had played a major role in China's economic growth. A Hong Kong court ordered Evergrande into liquidation in 2024, after the company failed to secure support for a workable debt restructuring plan. Its shares were later removed from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, formally ending its history as a publicly traded company. The liquidation has made limited progress. By August 2025, only around $255 million in assets had been sold, compared with approximately $45 billion in claims submitted by creditors. Liquidators have also pursued efforts to recover around $6 billion in dividends and payments made to Hui, his former spouse, and other former executives. Chinese regulators had already imposed severe penalties on Hui before the criminal verdict. In 2024, the country's securities regulator fined him approximately $6.6 million and banned him from the securities market for life, after finding that Evergrande's flagship property business had inflated earnings and committed securities fraud. Hui's imprisonment represents one of China's most significant punishments of a prominent property tycoon. However, the verdict does not resolve the enormous financial losses suffered by homebuyers, investors, and creditors, many of whom are still waiting to recover their money. The life sentence closes Hui's extraordinary rise from rural poverty to the top of Asia's wealth rankings. It also leaves Evergrande as one of the most powerful symbols of how aggressive borrowing, financial misconduct, and unchecked expansion helped turn China's property boom into a prolonged economic crisis.
Indonesia hit by quakes. Indonesia's Independence Day was celebrated on August 17th. The 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck Indonesia, becoming the deadliest quake to hit the country since 2022. Search efforts for bodies and possible survivors were still underway, with rescuers digging through the rubble of collapsed buildings, as the death toll reached at least 68 people. Hundreds more have been injured, and thousands have been displaced due to infrastructure damage. The quake hit off the coast of Flores Island at roughly 6 a.m. local time, 68 kilometers northwest of the coastal town of End at a depth of about 10 kilometers, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS. USGS reported that roughly 2 million people were exposed to strong and violent shaking. Hundreds of aftershocks followed. The province's governor issued a 14-day state of emergency. President Prabowo Subianto paid tribute to the victims of the earthquake during a ceremony for the country's 81st Independence Day, holding a moment of silence in their memory. According to USGS, a 5.3 magnitude earthquake is considered moderate, while a 6.3 magnitude earthquake is considered strong. The earthquake that hit Indonesia had a magnitude of 7.7, making it a major quake. It marks the latest of several earthquakes with magnitudes above 7 that have rattled countries this summer. Colombia is still in the process of recovering after it was struck by a 7.4 magnitude quake last week. And in June, Venezuela was devastated by back-to-back quakes with magnitudes of 7.5 and 7.7. What the luck! Car salesman becomes Belgian prince after DNA match. Royal secret goes public. Clement van den Kerkhove, a 26-year-old former car salesman, officially became a Prince of Belgium after his father, Prince Laurent, legally recognized him as his son. Laurent's paternity was confirmed by a DNA test that showed a 99.5% match, after Clement's mother revealed his father's identity to him when he was 16. Clement later contacted Laurent himself, and the two gradually built a relationship before the prince suggested they undergo the DNA test together. A prince, but not quite. The recognition took place quietly at a town hall ceremony about 6 months ago, with the details becoming public only this week. Clement can now use the title prince and has inheritance rights, but he will not receive a royal allowance, perform official duties, or enter the line of succession. He has also said he wants to keep his surname, rather than adopt the royal name.
A 26-year-old car salesman just officially became a Belgian prince. It all started with an accidental encounter in a shopping mall. Back in 2013, teenage Clement bumped into Belgium's Prince Laurent, completely unaware of who he just walked past. But his mother, a famous Belgian singer, kept a massive secret. When he turned 16, she finally confessed. That random guy in the mall was his biological father. For 4 years, Clement wrestled with this heavy royal reality. He finally gathered the courage to call the prince. After several tense calls, they agreed to meet in person. This led them straight to a hospital testing room. To ease the tension, the prince took his DNA test first. Days later, an email arrived from the lab, confirming a 99.5% genetic match. Instead of a scandal, the family handled it quietly. At a small town hall ceremony, Prince Laurent legally recognized his new son. But this fairy tale has strict boundaries. He gets no royal allowance and no spot in the succession line. He even refuses to take the royal Saxe-Coburg name. He declared that dropping his mother's surname would be a betrayal to the woman who actually raised him.
France warns of 300,000 potentially unsafe condoms. People who have used the condoms have been advised to get screened for sexually transmitted diseases. France issues warning over thousands of substandard condoms. French anti-fraud and health agencies have issued a recall order for roughly 260,000 condoms. They advised users to consider sexually transmitted infection and pregnancy tests amid risks of bursting or perforations.
कोई बात नहीं सेन्योरिटा, कोई बात नहीं। बड़े-बड़े देशों में ऐसी छोटी-छोटी बातें होती रहती हैं।
You are watching Sanglikar's Weekly.
Mejit is over. Like, Megxit is over. Harry and Meghan are returning to royal life in UK, with their children. End of American Dream. It is also said that Meghan is to act in Guy Ritchie's Netflix series, The Gentleman.
Now, in the past few minutes, the Daily Telegraph newspaper has reported that Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, plan to move back to the UK.
Daily Telegraph reporting that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, that their two children, Archie and Libet, will be moving back to the UK in the weeks ahead. In the past few minutes, I've spoken to a spokesperson for Harry and Meghan who has confirmed that this will be happening, that the children, Archie and Libet, are going to be enrolled or have been enrolled in a UK school, which means they are likely to start the new term in the second week of September. So we're likely to see the family back here literally in the weeks ahead. We understand, and the Telegraph are reporting, that they will move to a home outside of London. It won't be a royal residence of any kind. The move back to the UK won't change their status in any way. They will remain non-working members of the royal family, but they clearly feel, rather surprisingly, that at this stage of their lives they would like to return to the UK, move away from the life that they had built in America, and have their children, importantly, educated here in the UK.
Meghan Markle returns. Meghan Markle is in early talks for a part in The Gentleman's third season. The Netflix crime show is led by Guy Ritchie, but has not been officially renewed for season 3 yet. Rumors say Markle is eyeing a British project, but neither she nor Netflix have made any statements. If she joins, this would be her first major TV role since leaving Suits and moving to the UK.
Will Harry pay? Like, Harry lost defamation suit against Daily Mail, and English High Court has ordered Harry to pay costs of £9.5 million within a week. Will Harry pay?
Prince Harry and 6 others, including Elton John, ordered to pay $13 million following a failed invasion of privacy case. In a statement, the justice presiding over this case said that the payment must be made within 1 week to the publisher of Britain's Daily Mail newspaper. This marks a major loss for Prince Harry, who recently announced he would be moving back to the UK after 6 years.
$18 million due within just a week. That's the bill that a judge at the High Court here in the UK has delivered to Prince Harry, as well as 6 other co-claimants, the likes of Elton John, model Liz Hurley, and others who had this failed legal battle against the Daily Mail that they lost for what they said were invasions of privacy that the judge slapped down. And he was scathing when he delivered this cost hearing today in the UK, calling it a case that didn't really have any kind of evidential foundation, calling it suspect and subject to basically inference, not really any kind of solid legal framework around it. And what it means as well is, because the case was so poor, he's saying there's really no limit on what the Daily Mail can take this group of stars and high profile people for. So this $18 million figure, well, that's just the beginning. Their total cost totaled around £34.5 million. That's around 68 million Australian dollars too. That's going to play over the next year. So not the welcome Harry was hoping to have as he returns to the UK.
Like, Australia is going to set minimum wages for food delivery boys. UK will soon follow suit. Progressive move. Just that they should not break traffic signals.
Delivery drivers in Australia will now be paid a minimum of $31.30 per hour after a landmark deal between the Transport Workers Union and major delivery platforms was approved by the Fair Work Commission. Gig workers will also be insured for injuries under the agreement. The new standards come into effect on August 17.
Like, gold mine collapse in Zimbabwe, Africa killed over 100. Poor workers.
The death toll for a gold mine collapse in the Central African Republic has risen to more than 100. Several survivors were also critically injured. A local official says the death toll is likely to grow since several people are still missing and possibly trapped under the rubble. The mine collapsed on Tuesday morning near the border of Cameroon.
And finally, when asked to describe disaster in 3 words, prize went to the participant who wrote, Donald John Trump.
I also want to express our thanks to a wonderful woman here tonight who has done an unbelievable job. It's so sad. You know, you meet people and you love people, but her name is Caroline, and she's our press secretary, and she just had a baby. And I just learned she loves the baby more than she loves Donald Trump, and I'm very angry with her. Where's Caroline?
A wise man once said in January of 2020, Iran never won a war, but never lost a negotiation. That wise man.
Who said that?
Donald Trump.
Oh, that's what I thought you were going to say.
So how do you go back to the United States and convince a skeptical American public that this deal is a win?
Here they lost militarily, okay? It's very tough because I know that no matter what, if I would go, by the way, if I'd go another 3 or 4 weeks, those same people that are critical would say, he went too long, he should have done, you know, no matter what.
Lazy Bee. August 22nd, 2026.